Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. To another episode of MSP 1337. We are in the month of December. It is the Look Ahead series. This is, I think, part 3 at this point. I've got Josh Hohbein from Centrex IT. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be back.
Back again. Sounds like
Josh
is that the Houdini song? Yeah.
No, that's Without Me.
Oh, Without Me.
Which is so old that I actually forgot what that song was called because it came up randomly on Alexa last night, and I was like, "What's the song called?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's been like that long."
Yeah, was that like 2000, 2001?
That was 6th grade for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was definitely not 6th grade for me. I'll go with it was a couple grade levels after that. All right, so we'll jump right into it. Look ahead. I can tell you that some of the things that have been talked about over the past couple weeks have been, insurance, the future of insurance and policies and premiums, and the opportunities I think that a lot of the carriers are looking to obviously double down on in the MSP space because they see that there's still opportunity alongside that risk. The other areas, of course, AI, of course, gets talked about quite a bit, how it's going to positively and negatively impact. I actually was on a call last week with a security advisory board for a private school out of Australia, and the head of the security for the school had just written a book called Opportunity and Peril, as it's tied to AI as we look into 2026. I think that's pretty true. I had a vendor ask me for a quote and said, "But please don't talk about AI." I'm like, dang it, I was going to use AI to like write what I was going to say because it knows everything about me at this point. So just some of the things that have been talked about. Of course, I know AI, AI will be a big impact. What are the things that are on your radar, Josh, as we go, besides the trust mark, as we go into 2026?
Well, I mean, for our MSP, definitely, I can't not say AI, right?
Sure.
That is something that we're trying to do, but also what we're going about it is like, how can we introduce this safely? Because our clients are going to want it. So we're really trying to lead by the education. I mean, I know we've talked about like our maturity model for that we brought in for the cyber side on how to align to a framework. So we're really trying to do the same thing for AI, and not just show, hey, these are the security controls, but also the efficiencies, right? You want to use AI, you want to get started with it, great, right? What do you have in place now, and what efficiencies can you get, right? If you're just using a chatbot, like, cool, there are things that you can do with it, but if you want to be more efficient with it, what is your company's culture? What do your controls need to look like? What is the groundwork? So helping along with that while also developing the AI solution, but also the other thing that we're really focusing on is automation, which kind of goes hand in hand with AI. And I think AI gets thrown around for automation when maybe it's scripting or using N8N or Roost or even Power Automate, but really just understanding more of the business processes and how we can automate those. So automation and AI is a big thing for us that we're focusing on in 2026.
Well, I think that automation is something that, we talk about, go back to the Industrial Revolution, and a lot of the things there, when you look at like the assembly line and mass production of things, as automation came online and robotics, we transformed that physical space even again. And now I would argue that in the digital space, the world that we largely live in on a regular basis, despite some of the attempts out there to create a virtual space for us to actually live in, automation isn't net new. I would say over the last 3-4 years, automation has been, everybody's talking about it. I mean, I don't know how long Roost has actually been around, but vendors like Roost and Thread, and I think there's even one called Twine, but I don't want to say they do the same thing because they don't, but they doubled down on creating the ability for us to do, reduce the man in the middle or the human element of screwing things up. And so I think it's a really big one. I think we're at the beginning, perhaps, of what will be. I hate to say this. It's not about job replacement. It's about creating the opportunity for human efficiency and removing the error element. I get it. We might mess up a few times creating an automation script. I know fully that that is true because I've been working on one uh, since last week, and it kept failing after the second or third attempt. Well, it's because the connection was timing out. It wasn't because the script was written poorly. It just didn't have anything in there to tell it to reconnect. So I think 2026, I think that's a good call out. Automation is finally at a maturity stage with the tools that are available to really create and reduce friction where even think about password resets. Think about how complicated that is, and how do you verify and validate that the person asking for the reset is actually who they say they are. I would argue that automation might actually be a way for you to get some pre-qualification details before you say, yes, I'm going to reset this password.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, like we always hear, or we've heard in the MSP space, like be more of a business analyst, business partner, make your clients better at their business, right? And that's really what this automation is doing. But also internally, it's allowing us to automate some of those technical things, so we can dedicate more time on the partnerships, on the human business analyst kind of roles and positions and the strategy. Because if you're just doing the tier one tickets all day, where it's just the password resets and the simple stuff that can be automated, well, it's hard to have the time and to be able to grow to that capability.
Yeah, I think, and this isn't a good or bad, but I would argue that in most cases, someone who works on a level one help desk, um, IT is probably not their only focus. They probably have some sort of capability to, write an email, um, look at something and have an observation or some input that's, the human element that you don't get from the AI
Well,
space.
yeah, those are still
Documentation
going
is
to be needed.
huge.
Yeah, those are still 100% going to be needed. They're not going to go away. Their job is still the same, right? Be that human, the customer interfacing, the person who is able to figure out, who translate the person talking to the tech side of like what the
Sure.
actual issue is, to kind of help put out, not so much put out the fires, but at least calm the fires a little bit, right? It's You're not taking that part away from them. It's just handling the menial tasks, such as maybe some of the dispatching, or some of the repetitive tickets.
Yeah, I was dealing with a security. I redid my wireless network, and in hindsight, you think about, a new access point, and you create a new SSID. What all is impacted by that? You're like, oh, we'll just, just log into the new one. I was really surprised at how far back it had been since I had programmed my lights. So trying to find the original software that's needed in order to connect them to the right SSID in order to have them then reconnect to all of the automation. I spent way too much time on this. But what I realized is that document, if I would have documented the original, I wouldn't have had the problem. It would not have been a problem at all. And
uh,
because I did have that problem, I'm not the only one. Recently, a family member decided to purchase new internet at their house, and I did all the setup for them, prepped the call. They came on site, did the installation. I think they were in and out in 30 minutes, and I got an email that here's the link to the app and here's your code so you can log in. I could see all the devices. I could see the SSID. I could dial in the security for all the components, and I'm like, where was this when I put in my network?
yeah,
Like I had to do zero effort. Like it was just there and it was done.
it's pretty nice. I've been a fan of Ruckus for that for years, because you literally just like you turn it on and it's like boop, cool, we're done. So I do miss that's what I used to run in my house, is old Ruckus gear. But
Mine was not so ruckusy. I won't say who it is because I'm sure I'll get shamed for it. But literally, all I had to do was scan the QR code on the back of the access point while I was in the app. And it was immediately added to my
Nope.
controller. All right, so we kind of started leaning towards the tech space a little bit from the AI and how that impacts employees. I'd like to talk about what you're seeing from you talked about security and vendors and how they're using AI. I feel like one of the things that I'm seeing, and maybe this is you as well, every vendor out there seems to be adding some sort of AI component and touting it like they're the only ones that have it.
It's ubiquitous now. I don't know. It seems like every SaaS application you use, or so every tool that you has some sort of AI capabilities built into it. Um, I mean, really, almost any website you go to, you get the little AI like chatbot comes up and tries to help you. So again, it's you're just seeing it everywhere. I don't think it makes anyone else unique anymore. In
But
fact, you might be unique if you don't have AI.
right. One of the things though that I have noticed is that things that are unique to say a platform, and I'll give an example. I was talking to a vendor. Actually, I actually didn't talk to the vendor. They sent me a link with their sort of the what they wanted to talk about, and so I went and looked at it, and I was actually quite intrigued because they were providing an actual risk visibility using the AI tools in the background, right? Did asset discovery. It showed me what the asset classification was. It told me what kinds of data that it found on those assets. And then it gave me a risk score against each of those assets. So not an asset necessarily of an overall, but it showed like, server one had a score of say 4.4 out of 5, 5 being a high risk of vulnerability. I thought, the one thing that we see a lot of when MSPs go to present to their clients is trying to illustrate or show without using FUD factor and without talking about technology, using a risk heat map, showing them and saying, hey, these are the assets that you have. And this is the likelihood and probability that they're going to be compromised because they are not configured the way they should be. I'm starting to see more and more of that presented obviously in different ways, but vendors are starting to talk about and use language that involves the word risk. And I'm curious what you're seeing, because it used to be the word risk was like, that's one of those 4-letter words we just don't talk about.
I mean, I think again, you're trying to get more towards like how to properly show that, right? Again, if you're showing like, hey, the firewall isn't configured, or these configurations can be open, so you need like a hardening, or you need to redo that. Like you're speaking to the technical person, the technical buyer, but from the business owner perspective, if you can address that into business terms over dollars and cents or the risk to the business, it makes a difference. So I think it's just the tools are making it easier to have that conversation, but that's what we
Right.
should have been doing all along.
Absolutely. Well, you mean CVSS and your EPSS scoring, I think we're all starting to become desensitized to that too, because they're coming out in a no rhyme or reason particular order. They just constantly seem to be making noise. And I think one of the things that maybe is the challenge is we were so focused on having somebody else identify the security score that we weren't looking at probability and likelihood of our own environments. If it showed it was red, we went ahead and patched it, or we allowed for automation to just patch based on the availability of a remediation, but we weren't really focused on doing it from a risk-based management perspective.
Which again is what we should have, the probability of something happening and the impact of something happening. I mean, that's the best way to get it addressed. I mean, how
Right.
else do you communicate that? And again, it goes towards, especially the MSP industry. We're really trying to find the tools that solve everything. That's been kind of our crutch, is like, hey, there is there an app for that? No. Is there a tool for that? So now our tools are catching up to allow us to perform these more effectively and efficiently.
The cross vendor space, right, where the pane of glass that I'm looking at is also able to take in and ingest information from other technologies. It's not just, oh yeah, I got to go look at another pane of glass just to get some inkling of an idea as to what's going on.
Hmm.
So I think that's a pretty clear picture of what we're likely going to see. We're seeing a lot more, obviously, from vendors. What else are you seeing or predicting for 2026 that we should talk about in the time that we have left?
So really this is social engineering. I mean, that's where we're getting more and more of these attacks that coming through of this has been the thing and the trend for quite some time now is obviously the technical components, your 0 days are always going to be there. We're going to see AI attacks, we're
Sure.
going to use AI to defend them, but what's easier? It's me tricking you into giving me your identity, or even worse, me just saying, hey Chris, how would you like $40,000? Okay, cool. Give me your account so I can do what I need to. Or like their insider threat. So looking internally at that, I mean, we've seen more crafty ways of that social engineering and that identity layer. And I don't think that's going away because it's really hard to have technical controls around some of that. We've seen it lately, like we have a really great email gateway, but there's ways around it using legitimate business programs, such as, Microsoft using SharePoint, OneNote, OneDrive. If you block those links, well, now you can't do business. So having that awareness, the human factor, I mean, that's a really big one. I know, today actually we spent, so I'm on the board for our state's InfraGard. And this really doesn't affect the MSP space a lot, but it could affect our clients. One of the things that our critical infrastructure people are worried about is the threat of physical security, as well as threat actors like that are in the environment that have just been dormant. And it's like, how do you know if you don't have change control processes in place? If
Sure.
something got in and is just being dormant and sitting there. So I thought that was an interesting conversation around what some of these like larger enterprises are seeing. And they also mimic the identity as well.
Well, so I have a question along those lines. I was thinking about social engineering myself. I was thinking about how many organizations have, because of their public footprint, their website, a Facebook page, social media pages, they've set themselves up to be almost like the equivalent of, putting a salt lick out for a deer, uh, for deer hunters, right? Like, oh, we're gonna just gather them all into where the food patch is, and then we'll just have the it's not really hunting as much as it is gathering, right? And thinking about like the companies that put like the carousel of the vendor partners, the carousel of like client testimonials, like give someone 10 minutes. If you pick a target, they probably have figured out, okay, we know they're a Microsoft or Google, it's 50-50. I mean, even if you didn't even have the evidence to show you right there, you start doing some digging on their domain, maybe go to a couple sites that show information of what's being publicly made available. But like if I were to just see a carousel on an MSP's website and it shows that they use Fortinet, well, hey, guess what? Today's a good day to go shop for Fortinet. It's just so easy, and I don't know that there's been a lot of recognition around, hey, let's not make this any easier than it already is.
I'll do you one better, throwing IP addresses in your SPF record for allowing, and then you go to Shodan and look at that IP address in your SPF record, and it's a out of date, end of life FortiGate firewall that has multiple vulnerabilities that you can't patch. I
Right.
definitely, have never seen that before. That's just a hypothetical that totally would never happen.
Right.
Uh,
Nope. Definitely not.
uh, but it
That's crazy.
really it's one thing that I just I know with all of the AI, the automation, the cool shiny things that we want to do, but at the end of the day, you got to do the basics right. I mean,
Mhm.
again, just your things that we've been preaching over the last 10 years of security, of the awareness training, the even MFA. I mean, I know MFA is pretty easy to get around, but it's still just something. Anything you can do to make it just a little bit harder, right? And for
Yeah.
me, education is the biggest component of that. You can't just go buy a security training platform and give it to your clients and say, all right, here you go, like do your trainings. Like that doesn't it doesn't work, right?
Right.
You have to work with them to build that culture, to continually make them aware. Do a little presentation for them, just something where you're keeping them up to date, because that's the first line of defense. Is yes, they're the weakest link, but they're also the first line of defense. And put your technical controls behind it to try to block the threats, and then have good MDR behind that, because they're
Sure.
human. They're going to click on it. So we need to be able to respond and recover as quickly as possible. So just do the basics right, and you're going to be ahead of most.
I think that's pretty accurate. Social engineering, the other one we may not be able to stop is the voice impersonations, but I think that there are other. You said it. Make sure that you have the technical safeguards in place, or even the physical safeguards in place. Like, hey, you can't transfer money without these two people being looped in. Okay, well, the odds of the person calling you having the other two people on the line is not very high.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
impersonated one voice, not three.
Or just having like some sort of human MFA, having the procedures in place. I mean, one thing that we've actually seen recently that's hit us and some of our clients is a legitimate invoice that came in. It's getting around email gateways because there's nothing malicious about it. It's just the invoice doesn't need to be paid. It's a fraudulent invoice, but it looks
Sure.
clear. I mean, they've made it look at the bottom like he was in communication with our CEO, because you can grab that name off the internet. So like,
Wow.
instead
Yeah.
you looking at like what an email reply would look like, I mean, you can just type that. There's nothing magic about it. And if it weren't for our processes of, hey, before I approve this invoice or send this money, I need that secondary sign off, I mean, they would have gotten money. I mean, it's so again, you're having those like internal processes, that internal, non-technical MFA is just as important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That is for sure. Um, so we have just a few minutes left. I ask this every episode. Is there a book that you're reading that you think our audience needs to be reading as well?
Oh man, the last book I read was The Three Body Problem. So if you're into science fiction, it is a pretty cool read. Um, I actually the nonfiction, will give him a shout out. Art Gross, who's the CEO of Breach Secure Now, had From Prompt to Profit, how to do a go to market strategy for AI in your MSP. It's a quick read, 90 some pages, and it's really good stuff. I highly recommend it. Yeah, I'm sure it's fairly inexpensive, or if you reach out to him, probably get a free copy. But it was a great read, and it's helped us kind of build a foundation around our GTM practices for AI.
Wow. So basically, you're saying from prompt to AI can be up to speed in 97 pages. That's awesome.
I mean, it gives you like he's realistic about it too. I was going into it a little bit skeptical, but I really do
Sure.
appreciate what how we put it together, and basically it was like, hey, we've already been doing this with other services. We just need to rethink about how we're doing it for AI, and
Yeah.
providing the services and the education around it. So I was very impressed with it, and do recommend it.
Nice. It's funny at the end of the day when it comes to AI and the opportunities that it brings. In so many cases, it goes back to what you said earlier. Do we have the right things in place to ensure that we are successful with the implementation and rollout of an AI, whether it's through a copilot or something else? I don't know how many times I've looked at the way I could take advantage of AI, and I'm like, oh, I didn't think about it, searching that directory and then giving me that information. And so now it's telling me things I don't care to know on a question that had a very small area of relevancy, and it's going and pulling in things to make half of what it's telling me not true.
Yep. That's one thing about building your AI culture as well, is again the same thing with like, don't just say, hey, here's your copilot, have at it. Like, build up a place where you're sharing efficiencies and things that you've done with it, for other people to get ideas on how they could potentially use it to make their jobs better as well.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, there it is. We are out of time. For those of you that have been listening, this has been an episode of MSP 1337. Thanks and have a great week.